My mother once told me over burnt toast and black coffee that not every girl is meant to be remarkable. Then she smiled, like it was some kind of gift. Some girls shine, others clap. And that's okay, Ava. I was 19. West Point cadet. My boots still squeaked, my posture still textbook straight. I thought she was just being practical. Maybe even kind. But those words didn't land like advice. They lodged somewhere between my ribs and my pride. And for the next decade, they echoed through every phone call, every holiday, every forced family photo where I stood slightly to the side. My little sister, Emily? She didn't just shine. She was the damn spotlight. The kind of golden child people write articles about. ROTC queen, straight-A valedictorian, her smile front and center in the local paper at least 4 times before she turned 22. Me? I was the one who left West Point early. The almost soldier. The one they whispered about when they thought I couldn't hear. No one ever asked why I left. They just assumed I couldn't handle it. That I cracked under pressure. That I didn't have what it took to follow in my father's footsteps, or my grandfather's, or my great-uncle's. 3 generations of military men, and then me. The first to quit. But here's the part they never knew. I didn't quit. I was recruited. Pulled from my dorm one rainy Tuesday night and briefed by 2 men in gray suits who didn't introduce themselves. I signed a paper with no header, packed my things, and left before morning. No graduation, no medals, no picture on the wall. Just one-way tickets to places that don't exist on tourist maps. And while Emily got applause at her officer's banquet, I was ducking gunfire in a crumbling hotel in eastern Beirut. While she posted selfies in dress blues, I was 6 miles outside Caracas, whispering into a comms unit with a dead battery and a fake name. Still, every time I mailed a postcard to my mom or a birthday card with no return address, I told myself maybe one day I'd explain. That maybe, just maybe, they'd be proud. But they never asked. Not once. It's hard to answer questions no one's willing to ask. And over time, the silence between us didn't just grow, it hardened. Like concrete. Like something built to last. I wasn't resentful. At least not at first. I was busy staying alive. Until one day, I wasn't. I just wrapped a mission that took more out of me than I expected. I was grounded for the first time in years. No new orders. Just space. And in that quiet, the ache set in. The ache of being forgotten by your own blood. Of watching your name fade from their lips like a word they never learned to pronounce. One afternoon, I saw a photo online from Emily's pinning ceremony. Everyone was there. Even our 3rd cousin who lives 2 time zones away. Everyone, except me. The caption read, "So proud of our girl. 4 generations of service in one picture." And I thought 4. I counted 3. So where did I go? That question stuck with me. Followed me like a shadow I couldn't shake. Until the day my phone buzzed and my mother's name lit up the screen. "Emily's getting promoted again," she said. "There's a small ceremony. You should come. Just don't wear anything too flashy. Don't make her look bad." She said it like I was an afterthought. Like I was still 19 and needed a dress code. I didn't argue. I just said, sure. Not because I wanted to see them, but because after all these years, I needed them to see me. And this time, I wasn't going to clap. There's a certain kind of silence that only lives in classified corridors. It doesn't echo like regular quiet, it hums, low and steady, like something always listening. That was my life. For over a decade, I operated in shadows, moving between countries that don't officially host us, under names that never belonged to me. In Bolivia, I was a relief coordinator. In Libya, a freelance analyst. In Moldova, I was nobody, just a woman sitting alone in a cafe, pretending to read a newspaper while monitoring a back door for 5 straight hours. I learned how to disappear without ever leaving the room. And somewhere in that blur of cover stories and burner phones, I learned how to disappear from my own family. Not on purpose, not at first. I still sent gifts. I still mailed birthday cards, always with a fake return address that traced back to a P.O. box in Maryland. I called on Christmasants from a rooftop in Prague while it snowed sideways, once from a supply truck stalled in the Jordanian desert. My mother always sounded surprised. My father rarely stayed on the line long. And Emily? She never picked up. Sometimes I'd scroll through her social media just to see how she was. Promotions. Speeches. Posed photos with her hand on a podium, the flag billowing behind her like something out of a recruitment video. I once saw a comment that said, "The perfect soldier. The real hero of the Green family." I didn't click like. But I didn't scroll past either. I watched. Always. One time, I was on recon in Sarajevo, waiting for a contact who never showed. I ducked into a cramped internet cafe, paid in local cash, and logged into a burner account just to see if anyone from home had noticed my absence. They hadn't. But someone had posted an old photo of the Green kids. Me, Emily, our cousin smiling on a faded porch in Virginia. I looked closer. I was cropped out. The caption read, "Back when family meant everything." I felt my stomach turn. Not in anger. In realization. They hadn't just forgotten me. They'd edited me out. That same night, I got an encrypted message from Central Command change of assignment. No mission details, just coordinates and a departure window. I shut the cafe computer down, pulled my scarf tighter, and walked out into the snow, wondering if I'd ever matter to anyone who wasn't holding a weapon or a clearance badge. The hardest part wasn't the danger. It wasn't the near misses or the nights spent curled on concrete floors. It was knowing that back home, I was just a blank space. A ghost they didn't talk about. A name that didn't come up unless someone said, "Didn't you have another daughter?" Once, in Morocco, I bumped into a retired colonel who knew my father. He looked at me for a beat too long and said, "You're Roy's girl, right? The one who left?" I nodded. Smiled. Bit down the truth until it stopped trying to claw its way out. I'd gotten used to swallowing it. But it never stopped tasting like iron. And yet despite everything, I never stopped showing up in small ways. When my niece had pneumonia, I wired funds anonymously to cover the hospital bill. When Emily's dog died, I sent a sympathy card under a fake name because grief, even hers, deserves compassion. I stayed in the shadows, but I never stepped away. And sometimes, I told myself that was enough. That being invisible was a kind of service. That love didn't need credit to be real. But the truth is, I wanted more. I wanted them to look up from their polished lives and wonder, just once, where I was. Who I'd become. What I'd given up. Not for medals. Not for praise. But for something they never even knew was being protected. Them. And when that call came from my mother short, clipped, and cold, I realized something had shifted. Not in them. In me. I wasn't coming back to be acknowledged. I was coming back to reclaim the space I should have never had to fight for. The thing about my mother is she doesn't invite, she assigns. So when she called that Thursday morning, her voice brisk and already halfway through the sentence, I knew better than to expect warmth. "Emily's being promoted. It's on the 12th. Family only. Just don't wear anything flashy. She'll be in full dress uniform and we don't want you looking out of place." That was it. No, "Hi Ava." No, "How have you been?" Just instructions, like always. I held the phone in silence for a beat too long, waiting for something that never came, then said, "I'll be there." Not because I hoped for reconciliation. Not because I wanted some heartfelt reunion at the doorway. I was going for me. To see if, for once, they'd stop looking through me like I was a memory they never claimed. That night, I stood in front of my closet for what felt like an hour. I hadn't worn my old dress uniform in years. It was still sealed in a plastic garment bag, stiff, dark, clean like a chapter I was never allowed to finish. Next to it, I laid out a neutral blouse, beige slacks, low heel something, soft, quiet, forgettable. I folded both outfits into my suitcase, not yet sure which version of myself I'd need to be. In the mirror, I caught my own reflection and barely recognized her. The hair pulled tighter, the eyes sharper, the face carved by sandstorms and sleepless nights, no medals on the chest. No makeup on the cheeks, just me. All of me. No longer seeking a seat at their table, just making sure I didn't leave my own chair empty. I left before dawn. 12 hours of backroads and highway gas stations, just me and a steady stream of country radio and old intel reports playing in my head. When I finally crossed into Virginia and saw the sign for Norfolk, my stomach tightened not with nerves, but with something heavier. Familiarity. The kind that doesn't comfort. The kind that cuts. Their house was exactly as I remembered. Beige siding, white trim, the same porch swaying under the weight of old wind. The flag was new brighter but still perfectly folded, still screaming, "We serve. We sacrifice." I parked around the corner. Didn't want to announce myself too early. I walked up the path with steps that didn't falter, even when the front door opened and my mother appeared like she'd been expecting me to hesitate. "You made it," she said, already turning back inside. No hug, no smile. Just motioning toward the guest room with a flick of her hand. "You'll sleep down the hall. Don't unpack too much. And Ava? Let's try not to make tomorrow about you." I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I'd already decided. This time, I wasn't going to defend my presence. I wasn't going to apologize for being harder to explain. I was just going to be there. Fully. Quietly. Without shame. And if they couldn't handle that, well, the problem wouldn't be mine. Dinner was scheduled for 1900 sharp because in this house, even meals come with briefing times. I came downstairs in the beige blouse, the one that said, "I'm trying," without saying anything at all. My boots were polished but not flashy. My hair pulled back, no makeup, just neutral, just safe, just small. The dining room looked like a recruitment poster, exploded framed medals, flag-shadowed portraits, a centerpiece made of mini American flags and red, white, and blue napkin rings. My seat had no name card, everyone else had one. I found a spot near the end of the table, beside an empty chair that probably belonged to the dog. My father offered a nod, half greeting, half assessment. My mother hovered, placing last-minute finishing touches like she was staging a victory parade. Emily entered last, of course. Perfectly on time, perfectly composed. Dress blues so crisp they looked like they'd never been worn, ribbons lined with surgical precision. She swept into the room like a dignitary, kissed my aunt on the cheek, hugged my cousin's wife, and then turned to me. "This is my sister Ava," she said, flashing that practiced smile. "She used to be in the military. I think she works in admin now." A few polite chuckles followed, nothing loud, nothing cruel, but sharp enough to slice. One of my younger cousins leaned in and whispered, "VA office, right? Better than nothing." I didn't answer, just tilted my head and smiled in that way you do when you're too tired to correct the narrative. That's the thing about being erased slowly. You stop fighting every little falsehood. You just let people write the version they need, so long as they don't look too closely. Throughout the meal, Emily held court. She was graceful, charming, everything they wanted her to be. Her fiancé's own junior intel officer with perfect teeth kept touching her shoulder like he was proud just to breathe near her. At one point, someone toasted her resilience. "She's been through so much and never lost her spark," my uncle said, glass raised high. I almost laughed. Spark? I once crawled through a collapsed tunnel with a broken wrist to extract a wounded informant while mortar shells fell 2 clicks out. But, sure, spark. I just sipped my water. At one point, Emily turned to the table and said, casual as if she'd been rehearsing it, "I'm including something in my speech tomorrow. A reminder that sometimes the people who walk away weren't strong enough to stay." Her eyes didn't meet mine, but the room went quiet for half a beat. Like everyone knew. Like everyone waited to see if I'd flinch. I didn't. I set down my fork, calmly. I looked at my mother, then my father, then Emily. And said nothing. Because silence when Chosini's louder than anything else. And in that moment, I wasn't ashamed. I wasn't small. I wasn't the ghost they'd gotten used to not seeing. I was the storm they hadn't prepared for. The hall was packed. Flags everywhere. Rows of folding chairs aligned like soldiers in formation, brass fixtures casting soft gold halos onto stiff uniforms and even stiffer egos. I was seated 3rd row from the back, labeled Family Unassigned, which is just military code for, "We'll tolerate you, but don't make a scene." To my left, a captain's wife reeking of floral perfume. To my right, some second lieutenant's girlfriend who kept checking her lip gloss in a compact mirror. Nobody knew who I was. And honestly, that was fine. I wasn't here for them. I was here to watch. To sit. To witness, for once, what they all thought mattered most. Emily took the stage like it was her birthright, her uniform flawless, hair pinned like she practiced in her sleep. That same tight smile stretching just far enough to look human. And then she started her speech. Loyalty. Perseverance. Honor. All the buzzwords, lined up like dominoes. But then she pivoted. Just slightly. And said, sometimes we must distance ourselves from those who once abandoned the sacred duty of the uniform. The room still not gasped, not reacted, just adjusted. Like a shift in air pressure. I stayed silent. Face unreadable. Not because I didn't feel something, but because I felt everything. Anger, sadness, disbelief. The kind of ache that doesn't show up in a scream, it sits behind your ribs and waits. But then, it happened. The door at the back of the room opened. General Matthew Harding, retired command lead for strategic intelligence, 4 tours, 3 commendations, walked in. Quiet, deliberate, commanding. His eyes scanned the rows, slow and intentional, until they stopped. On me. And I knew. Before he even took a step, I knew. He didn't hesitate. He marched forward, boots clicking like punctuation. Came to a stop right beside me. And then, in front of 100 uniformed eyes and a podium full of praise, he saluted. Ma'am, he said, clear, steady. General Weston, it's an honor to see you again. Silence fell like a dropped weapon. Emily's mouth parted. Her note card trembled slightly. Every eye shifted from her to me. I stood slowly. Returned the salute. Not for validation. But because I would never let the man who trusted me with lives stand alone. In the corner of my vision, I saw my mother's water glass slip from her hand. It hit the floor with a crack like a starter pistol. My father, halfway to standing, froze mid-motion, then slowly sat back down like gravity doubled. Whispers swept through the crowd like wildfire. Is that her? Weston, the dagger commander? I didn't respond. Didn't smile. Just met their gaze head-on. Not aggressive, just unflinching. Because when someone calls you a ghost long enough, showing up in daylight becomes an act of defiance. Emily tried to speak again, her voice brittle, like stretched sugar about to shatter. But no one was listening. Not anymore. The gravity in the room had shifted. She was no longer the center. I didn't steal it. I just existed. Fully. Finally. When the ceremony ended, the applause was light. Uneven. No one knew where to direct it. As people filed out, conversations sparked quiet, fragmented. Emily found me near the exit. Her jaw clenched, eyes sharp. Why didn't you say anything? She hissed. You let me stand up there like a fool. I looked at her, not unkindly, but steady. If the truth shrinks you, Emily, maybe you were never standing that tall to begin with. She blinked fast. Twice. Like holding back something behind her lashes. I didn't wait for her to respond. I walked out with my shoulders straight, boots tapping a rhythm that didn't beg for attention. And for the first time in years, I wasn't leaving a room, I was changing the temperature inside it. Back at the guest quarters, everything felt too quiet. Government beige walls, hum of the overhead light, that cheap soap smell that never really leaves your hands. I kicked off my shoes, sat down hard on the edge of the bed, and exhaled for the first time in hours. But then I saw it. Right there on the desk. A manila envelope. No name, no seal. Just sitting like it belonged. My heart didn't race. It dropped. Because deep down, I knew. I opened it. Inside was a printed email, time-stamped 2 years ago. Subject line, reckless operation, civilian casualties. It was addressed to a fringe military watchdog site, anonymous sender, vague claims about a classified mission gone wrong. Operation Pike. A mission I'd led. The words stopped me cold. Not because the details were new, but because they were familiar. Too familiar. Almost word for word from a classified after-action report I'd read in a steel-walled intel cell in Germany. A report only 3 people had access to. Me, the lead analyst, and one junior officer on rotation clearance. Emily. My hands didn't shake, but something inside me started connecting dots I'd ignored for too long. The random internal review that sidelined me right before the NATO briefing. The strange flag on my access badge that mysteriously lifted after 48 hours. The time I got pulled from a council seat with no explanation, just a generic protocol reassignment. I thought it was politics. I thought it was the system being the system. But maybe it wasn't just bureaucracy. Maybe someone made sure the smoke stayed long after the fire burned out. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, the envelope on the nightstand, my mind crawling through every hallway I'd ever walked with Emily. Every smile that never quite reached her eyes. Every time she said, "You always get everything." Maybe it wasn't a grudge. Maybe it was desperation. The next day, I found her outside the after-party. She was on the phone, half smiling, wine glass in hand, still soaking in the spotlight like it was sunlight she'd earned. I waited until she hung up. Held up the email. She glanced at it. Blinked. Recognition flared in her eyes like a match. Then she said it. Not defiant. Not ashamed. Just. Flat. Yes. I sent it. I nodded once. Why? Her shoulders dropped, like strings cut from a marionette. Because you weren't supposed to win. I didn't flinch. She kept going. You left. You walked away, and even then they still talked about you. You did everything behind a curtain and still somehow mattered more. I thought if I erased your name, maybe mine would stick. For a second, I saw her as she was at 13 following me through the yard, tripping over her boots, begging to be let into the treehouse I'd built from stolen planks and stubborn pride. She'd always wanted in. Not to be better, just to be enough. I said nothing. Just held her gaze until she looked away. You do realize, I said, steady, leaking classified intel is a criminal offense. She didn't reply, didn't run, didn't deny it, just stood there. Still. Silent. Small. I walked away with the envelope still in hand. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I needed the truth to have a name. And this time, it did. It was the alarm that woke me. Not the morning bugle, not the bass PA, but a sharp digital siren screaming from my phone. Emergency protocol activated. High clearance personnel to report immediately. No explanation. No time. Just urgency. My body moved before my mind did. Muscle memory from 20 years of being ready before the world even realized something had gone wrong. By the time I got to command operations, the place was buzzing, officers in partial uniform, analysts blinking at flickering screens, one colonel shouting into 2 phones like it would slow the chaos. I was handed a file. Thin. Too thin for the level of panic in the room. Inside, a timestamp. 3 hours earlier, someone had uploaded fragments of Operation Pikes, that Piketo, a private dark web forum. Redacted mission files. Tactical plans. Internal notes, and worse. The forensic trace led back to my old device. Not something I owned. Something assigned to me years ago. Deactivated. Or so I thought. The walls felt tighter than usual. The air colder. Within minutes, I was sitting across from General Harding and 2 men from military intelligence. They didn't say the word, but I was under suspicion. I gave them everything. Phone, laptop. Personal logs. I held nothing back. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't a coincidence. It was a trail. And someone had left it messy. I remembered that envelope. That email. Emily's admission. It all felt too obvious. And too convenient. I pulled metadata. Old instincts kicking in like muscle reflex. The email she'd sent, the one meant to bury me, had triggered something. A retrieval process from a legacy archive server. Something no longer in use. Something I didn't even know was still wired in. The server had flagged the old Pike report. But attached to a hidden, dormant was a second file. One with top clearance tags. One no one was supposed to see. Emily didn't know she sent it. But the link she used? It did. I dug deeper. Followed IP traces. Login timestamps. It all led to one terminal. The comm station in Echo Bay, a system that Emily had access to. That she'd mentioned casually leaving unlocked during prep week. That night, that exact time. I sat there staring at the screen. Not in disbelief, but in dawning clarity. It wasn't sabotage. It wasn't treason, it was negligence. Desperation. Maybe both. A moment of carelessness that cracked open a door we'd kept bolted for years. I stood up, heart heavy, walked straight to Harding's office. "Sir," I said, "if you want the truth, I need to lead the investigation myself." He didn't argue. He just stared at me for a moment, like he was trying to measure what this would cost. Then finally said, "General Weston, the floor is yours." The task force wasn't what I expected. I'd imagined a team of analysts, digital forensics guys, maybe a legal officer or two. But when Harding handed me the list of personnel, my stomach dropped. Roy Weston Intel Archive, Marilyn Weston Forensic Trace Analysis, and Emily, System Access and Internal Vulnerability Audit. My entire family, drafted into the truth. It felt like a bad sitcom pitch. One betrayed sister. One cold mother. One silent father. One ambitious sibling. All trapped in a conference room with national security on the line. I almost laughed. Almost. Our first meeting was held in a cold conference room near base security. No one made eye contact. My father spoke first. Direct. Clipped. Operation Pike Archive Breach, confirmed. Packet origin unknown. Objective trace chain of exposure. He sounded like he was reading a weather report, not confronting the possibility that his daughter might have blown a hole in military protocol. Emily went next. Her voice was too even. Too measured. Every sentence perfectly paced, like she'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. She didn't look up once. My mother didn't speak. Just glanced at each of us like she wasn't sure who we were anymore. Maybe she wasn't wrong. We weren't the same people she raised. We were ghosts in uniform. I didn't say much that day. Just listened. Not to the words. To the breathing between them. You learn a lot in intelligence work when you stop reacting to noise and start tracking silence. On day 3, we hit something. A dormant Trojan program buried inside a logistics shell from 2017. It had never activated. Just waited. The date stopped me cold. 2017. Mosul. I remembered the op. A joint strategy brief gone sideways. I'd overruled a campaign lead, Derek Glade. He'd wanted a full sweep, fast and loud. I pushed for a phased plan to limit civilian fallout. He called me a liability in private, a PR general with soft hands. I called him reckless. And blocked the order. The next day, I was pulled from the op. No warning. Just a reassignment that stank of retaliation. I stared at the code buried in that archive file, the one Emily had accidentally reactivated. The code structure matched Glade's style. He was always clever. Just not as invisible as he thought. My mother handed me a folder. Soft, old. Paper worn at the edges. "You left this," she said. Back then, I read it. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't warm either. Just real. "I thought you were hiding. Now, I think you were surviving." I didn't speak, didn't nod, but I felt something shift. Not forgiveness. Not closure. Something quieter. Recognition. The next day, we caught the break we needed. A remote login. Motel Wi-Fi outside Fort Liberty. A burner laptop. 3 days prepaid in cash. The reservation name? Derek Glade. I stood up without a word and ordered the team into position. This wasn't about Emily anymore. This was bigger. Someone had been watching us unravel. And waited for the right moment to drive the knife deeper. We surrounded the old tech relay at 400. No lights, no movement. The place looked abandoned, just a forgotten bunker with vines climbing the edges and rust staining the hinges. But Glade was inside. We found him hunched over a monitor, mid-upload, headphones still on like he didn't hear the breach team coming. He didn't flinch, didn't reach for a weapon. Just looked up at me, dead in the eye, and smirked. "Took you long enough." In interrogation, he didn't beg. He didn't bluff, he just unraveled, piece by piece. I didn't want to ruin you, he said. I just needed you out of the room. You were always 5 steps ahead. Too fast, too clean, too damn untouchable. I couldn't compete. So I waited. I watched your family fracture. I saw the gaps. Your sister was sloppy. Left the door open. I didn't force it, I just walked through. His voice wasn't angry, it was bitter. Like someone who thought he deserved the stage but ended up working the lights. He admitted everything. Using the old archive shell. Tracking my movements. Leaking partial files to throw up red flags. It wasn't about justice, he said. It was about resetting the board. You weren't supposed to still be playing. When Emily read the transcript, she didn't speak for a long time. Her eyes just moved across the lines slowly, like hoping the meaning might change if she blinked enough. Finally, she whispered. I didn't know. I didn't know it would go this far. I folded my arms. Sometimes we set fires in dry fields because we're jealous. We forget people are sleeping in that grass. She didn't cry, but her armor cracked just a little. The next morning, she submitted a formal statement. Took full responsibility for the chain of emails. Acknowledged the negligence. The oversight. The pride. It didn't lead to charges in matters in intelligence work, but it cost her. Promotion eligibility frozen for 5 years. Reprimand in permanent record. She signed it without being asked. And maybe that was her way of saying sorry. That night, we had one final task force session. Everyone was tired. Quiet. But when my father stood to give his remarks, he paused, then looked at me. I owe this team an apology. Especially to General Weston. I let medals and pride make me blind. I failed to ask the right questions, and that silence. It cost us. I didn't smile. I didn't nod. But in that moment, I didn't feel erased anymore. Not because he changed, but because I no longer needed his validation to exist. And Emily. When I met her eyes, I didn't see a rival. I saw a woman learning to stand on her own without trying to knock someone else down. 2 weeks later, I was back in DC. My apartment was still the same tiny, quiet, facing a crooked alley and a forgotten mural. The world outside hadn't changed. But I had. Not because of the investigation. Not even because of the closure, but because for the first time in my life everything I carried no longer felt like a secret. I resumed my role as strategic advisor, briefing NATO task forces, drafting conflict simulations, pushing pencils that decide where boots go. But once a month, I drove back to Fort Liberty. Not for duty. For something softer. I taught a small seminar on non-traditional warfare and soft power resilience. And Emily? She never missed a session. She sat in the front row, notebook open, never hiding her questions anymore. She pushed back. She challenged my assumptions, and sometimes, when I spoke about missions we both knew too well, she went quiet. One afternoon, after class, she handed me a thin binder. No title. Just a sticky note. It read, "Take a look." Inside was a proposal training protocol reform built off my own soft strategy methods. She didn't ask me to sign it. Just wanted to know if I believed in it. I flipped to the front page, grabbed a pen, and wrote one word. Advance. A month after that, I invited them all, my mother, my father, Emily, to the old family house. Same porch. Same creaky floorboards. Same smell of lemon cleaner and unresolved memories. But this time, I arrived first. I set the table. I sat at the head. No fanfare, no speech. Just the space I'd once been denied. When they walked in, no one spoke. My mother carried a covered dish. My father nodded. Emily looked at the chair across from me, and then sat down. I didn't make it a performance. I just told the truth. I told them I never quit the military. I was recruited into Black Ops. I told them I missed birthdays not because I didn't care, but because I was buried beneath a Syrian hospital coordinating evacuations no one could know about. I told them I declined 3 medals because accepting them would have blown diplomatic cover. I told them about the sleepless nights, the weight of signatures, the moments where lives balanced on decisions that fit inside one-word orders. I didn't share it for pity. I shared it because silence had cost me enough. When I finished, my father asked softly, "Why didn't you ever tell us?" I looked him in the eye. "Because you never asked. And honestly, I don't think you'd have believed me if I had." No bitterness, no blame, just truth. My mother reached into her purse and pulled out a photo, the same family picture I'd been cropped from all those years ago. She turned it around. Taped to the back was a new one. One with all of us. Taken the week after the hearing. I didn't smile. I just nodded. Because I didn't need forgiveness. I didn't need to rewrite history. I just needed to stop hiding from it. Weeks passed. The conference came. A major summit on post-conflict intelligence. My name was on the banner. My bio read, Major General Tessa Weston Operations Strategy, Asymmetric Warfare, Shadow Campaigns. I walked on stage alone. No intro, no trumpet, just me and a clicker. I didn't open with tactics. I opened with this. Some wars never reach headlines, some victories leave no medals. And sometimes, the biggest battles happen inside the homes we thought were safe. The room didn't move. I could feel the silence like breath held too long. I told them about choosing empathy over force. About the mission I'd halted because 7 children were hiding in a schoolyard. I told them the truth doesn't need a podium, it just needs someone brave enough to say it out loud. When I was done, I looked to the second row. Emily stood. No tears, just clarity. Her hands came together, then the room followed. Not for the strategy, not even for me, but for what the silence had finally allowed to speak. Later that evening, she handed me a cupcake. Frosted in blue. On top, it said 3 words. General, sister, teacher. I didn't need applause. I didn't need headlines. I just needed someone to see Menno through medals, not through mistakes but through the eyes that finally understood. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt invisible in a room full of people who say they love you, drop a comment, share your truth, and don't forget to subscribe. Because sometimes, the quietest stories are the ones that echo the longest.